Namaste. How's everybody? Uh, Seems so unusual to be here after being here for like almost 2 years every Thursday. This is like the second Thursday in a row. That's crazy. Okay. Pranabam Bhavanukuma Kalabhanapavak Yanagan Jasuhradayagha Vasain Ram Sarachabdha Atulita Baladham Hemmashalavadeham Dhanujavan Kurshan Jnaninama Graganyam Sakalaguna Nidhanam Vanaranam Madhisham Raghupati Priya Bhaktam Atajatam Namami Goshpadi Kurtavarisham Mashiki Kritarakshasam Ramayanam Hamalaratnam Andenilatmajam Anyananandaram Viram Janaki Shokanashanam Kapisamaksahanta Andelanka Langa Sindhu Salilam Salilam Yashokavai Janakatmaja Adatane Dadalanka Okay, so I don't know. Are we live now?
Yeah, that's you.
We're live. Well, we weren't live just a few seconds ago. We've come back to life. I guess the power went out. I don't know if we're on the generator now or not.
I'll see.
Whatever. How about Instagram? Is that working? Let's take a minute to do one little adjustment here. Hope I won't make too much noise. I'm going to move the microphone on the harmonium, as it's a little murky. The harmonium I'm using today is called Frankenharm. Because we pieced it together from like at least two, maybe three other harmoniums. It was great. The harmonium wizard, Dave Schneider, without whom I wouldn't have a job, helped put this together, and we just geeked out. We're harmonium geeks. We geeked out on this. All right, so are we up and running? Everything's good? Wait, I didn't. Maybe that'll be okay. Let's see. No Javam Maruttatulya Vegam Jitendriyam Udhimatam Vardishtam Vatatmajam Vanardayurtamukyam Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye. Anjaneya Matipatalanana Kanchanada Kamaniya Vigraham Parijata Taramula Vasanam Bhaveyami Pavamananandanam Yatra Yatra Raghunath Kirtanam Tattva Tattva Kritamastakhanjali Vashpavari Paripurna Lochanam Martinamat Rakshasantakam Bolo Bajranga Bale Hanuman Ki Jai. Sitaram, Sitaram, Sitaram Jai, Sitaram, Sitaram Jai, Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Sitaram Jai, Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, yes, Sitaram. I think the electricity's coming and going again. Sitaram, 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 yes, Sitaram. 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 Sitaram, Sitaram, yes, Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yes, Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yes, Sitaram. Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yes, 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 Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yeah, 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 Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yes, Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yeah, Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yeah, Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yeah, Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 yes, Sitaram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate. Om Ham Hanumate Namah. Om Ham Hanumate just embrace only love shining in endless space. All I want is to be with you. All my prayers have been heard. All my life has led me to your heart as wide as the world. I looked away, your beauty too much to bear. Where could I run? Your eyes, I found them everywhere. All I want is to sing to you the song that no one has heard. All I need is to rest inside your heart as wide as the world. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram. Okay. So, yeah, I wrote that in English. I wrote that, and I showed it to Siddhima. I wrote it out and showed it to her. Next thing I know, it was framed and put on the wall and by Maharaji's rooms in Rishikesh. That's so sweet. So, where are we here? Friday, September 15th to 17th, we'll be in Joshua Tree at Bhakti Fest. And then the next weekend, we're at Kripalu, in person or online. And then Friday 6th and Saturday the 7th, New York City Urban Retreat, retreat to the urban. Kirtans and workshops and chanting Hanuman Chalisas with Nina and everybody. And the kirtans will be Friday night and Saturday night in the afternoon. Saturday will be chanting Chalisas and then also workshop in the afternoon. Then later in the year, I'll be in Australia, in Mullumbimby, Sydney and Melbourne. Unfortunately, I don't have much time, so I can't get to Western Australia or to Brisbane or to Byron or Adelaide. I used to go, so I can't get to those places this time, and it's a shame, but that's the way it is. And then after Australia, I'll be on Bali, the island of Bali, and be doing a workshop from November 11th to the 18th in Ubud. So all that information is on the website. Okay, so I wonder if Katie could talk some more about Japa. There are some audio tracks on YouTube of Maharaji chanting Rama, which have also been put to meditative backing tracks. I haven't heard that, I don't think. I listen to them regularly. It's a profoundly moving experience for me to hear Maharaji's voice resonating Ram, and chanting along has allowed me to build a deeper connection with his presence. Could Katie talk about Japa, how Maharaji practiced Japa, and if he knows where this audio came from? I know where that audio came from. When we first got to Nainital, we were befriended by so many of the devotees, the local devotees there. One of them was Dwarka Shah, is a distant relative, I think, of KK's and ML's. But anyway, so we were invited to their house for dinner, myself, Rameshwar Das, and Danny Goldman, Jagannath Das. And we had with us I think we had a small Walkman cassette recorder or player recorder, very simple. I think this was 1970. So I hope, so we had something. I don't know what it was. And so while we were having dinner, after dinner, Dwarka Shah showed us a big tape machine that he had. And he said, Maharaji had come to their house and had recited Ram Ram, and he had recorded it. So he played it for us, and we put our tape recorder right by the speaker, and we recorded it over the air, into our little Walkman, a little cassette recorder. It's been through some iterations. In other words, I tried to have it cleaned up. I tried to have the sound cleaned up a few times by audio engineers, and because it got a little distorted. Also, the electricity in India, especially in the mountains in those days, wavered like ridiculous. And so the tape recorder that it was recorded on would alternately go faster or slower. So it was just crazy. So it sounded like Maharaji, but not really like Maharaji. But it did. You could tell it's Maharaji for sure. Yeah. So it was just a little distorted. So we tried to fix that as much as we could over the years. And so yeah, that's the story. That's where it came from. Now, as far as asking me about how Maharaji practiced Japa, I have no idea how Maharaji did anything, how or why. All I know is that he did. The name of Ram was always merged in the sound of the name of Ram. His tongue was always moving. If he wasn't talking, his tongue, you could see his tongue going like this all the time. But it's impossible for us to accurately understand and really know what his experience, because we are so locked in our egoistic, personal, interpersonal worlds, subjective universes, that we can never know what a real saint is experiencing. All we can say is that we know, we believe that he was fully merged in the name of Ram, in Ram, and that he had no agenda of his own. Everything that happened to him, everything that happened through him, happened through him. He wasn't the doer. So listen to this quote from Ramana Maharshi. The realized ones send out waves of spiritual influence which draw many people towards them, even though they may be sitting silently in a cave. We can listen to lectures about truth and come away with hardly any grasp of the subject. But contact with a jnani, or a realized being, will give much more understanding, even if he does not speak. The realized being does not need to go out among the public, but can, if necessary, use others as instruments. So, and then he says also, meditation on the Guru's face or form is only for beginners. Advanced disciples should concentrate inwards on the self. This is equal to meditating on the Guru, for he is one with the self. The Guru does not bring about realization, but removes the obstacles to it, for the self is always realized. So Maharaji was, we believe, a fully realized being, but we don't even know what that means. Those are words. We can't conceive of what that means. We hear that he had no icha, no desire of his own, and he had his will, his personal will had been fully dissolved into the will of what to say, God, the Supreme Being. And that when he walked across the courtyard, there was no sense that they say he was being moved across the courtyard. It wasn't him moving. There was no personal ego in that being anymore to do anything that related to a small s self. And so he said to us over and over again that through the repetition of the name, everything is accomplished. He said these people, the Westerners, could get everything through devotion. They didn't need to meditate. They didn't need yoga. And so we can only imagine his state. We can't even imagine his state, the state of these great beings, because we can only imagine, our imagination is made up of concepts that we already know. We can't go beyond that, beyond the concepts, until we do. And through the repetition of the name, we can go beyond those concepts. We can, they say, we can merge and dissolve into the oneness, which we already are, but we have these obstacles, which is our storylines, our beliefs, our attachment to our thoughts and emotions, etc. Our attachments, aversions, all those things. This is what keeps us locked up in the prison of the delusion of the separate self. So, yeah, that's that. Someone's asking me about what what K.C. Tiwari did, what Mr. Tiwari did, what his practice, I have no idea. How he meditated, I have no idea. He did do Japa for a long time, many years, most of his life. He was always doing Japa. He had mala that Maharaji had given him. There had been 2 malas. Maharaji had taken some money from a devotee down in somewhere in South India and sent him out to buy 2 sandalwood malas. And the 2 malas came back. Maharaji put them on. He wore them for a few hours or all day. And then he gave 1 to Siddhi Ma and 1 to K.C. Tiwari. So his whole life, Siddhi Ma and Maharaji, they did much japa on those malas. But exactly what practices Tiwari was doing when he meditated, you're asking the wrong guy. You have to ask him. And you say you want to start a practice, maybe not that early, but people think they're going to do a practice and then their lives are going to be perfect and wonderful. But actually, once you start to do a practice, that's when you come into contact with your stuff. And that's when life gets difficult, because you see how blocked you are, you see your stuff, you see your attachments, you see your likes and dislikes, you see your nastiness and your cleverness and your manipulation. You see all this stuff about yourself that you never noticed before. So it doesn't get easier. Life doesn't all of a sudden become simple when you sit to meditate. When you start to do practice, then you start to see what your work really is. But you keep going with the practice and you keep releasing all the negative stuff within us, and eventually, ... One thing about Tiwari, Tiwari's son, Sharad, his oldest son, had come to visit him from Lucknow in Delhi. Tiwari was staying, Miss Ma and Baba were staying at their daughter's house. And while Sharad got there, and while he was sitting with Tiwari, he got a phone call from Lucknow that his younger son, his second child, had fallen off the roof of the house and cracked his skull and had died. So Sharad was very upset, but Tiwari said to him, no, he's not dead, but go back now, go back. He's not dead. So sure enough, Sharad went all the way back to Lucknow, went to the hospital, and Nitin was not dead. He was in a coma. He had cracked his skull, his eyes had popped out of his head. They put everything back together and he was in a coma and he wasn't dead. So at the same time, Tiwari had stopped doing his mala. He had stopped doing japa with the mala. So he picked up his mala and he said to his daughter, Minu, he said, he listens to me when I do this. And he began to do japa again with the mala. And 3 days later, something like that, the young boy came out of the coma and he was basically fine. And he's fine today, still alive, got married, had a baby, everything's good. At some point, after Nitin had recovered, Tiwari got up in the morning, as he usually did, and he went to the bathroom to pee, but he stopped outside the bathroom door and just stood there. Mrs. Tiwari said to him, what's wrong? Should I come? But she couldn't move. She actually couldn't. She tried to move, but she couldn't get up. And at some point, while he was standing there, he fell stiff like a tree and banged his head against the wall and fell down to the ground unconscious. And he was in a coma for 3 days, apparently, which at that point he opened his eyes and his daughter was there and she says, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Perfectly all right," which is what he always said, "Perfectly all right." Then he closed his eyes and he was gone. So my feeling is that he traded what was left of his life and asked Maharaji to give it to the boy. He was definitely asking for something because he said when he picked up the mala, he listens, Maharaji, he listens to me when I do this. So he must have been asking for something. And it's funny, the boy, his personality kind of changed after that. He started going to temples, got interested in spiritual things, at least to some degree, where he wasn't at all interested before. Can you share if there were any meetings between Maharaji and Anandamayi Ma? Tiwari was with Maharaji in Nainital the first time that Anandamayi and Maharaji met. It happened in the row of buildings called the railroad flats, where the railroad workers worked, very low rent dwellings. And apparently Maharaji and Tiwari walked into the room where Anandamayi was, and they looked at each other and just laughed and laughed. They knew each other very well, very well. It was like, "This is what you look like now?" Like that, kind of like that. And Anandamayi used to, in those days, Siddhima was a younger woman and she was married to an older man. And in those days in India, women didn't leave the house without their husbands, mostly. And so Siddhima spent most of her time in the house. And Anandamayi Ma would come to KK's house because she knew that family very well. And she would climb up on the roof at KK's house and then walk across a couple of roofs and come down into Siddhima's kitchen to hang out with her. And they would spend time together, and then Anandamayi would leave. To be a fly on the wall of that kitchen would have really been something. Do you have specific methods to access very deep wisdom and discernment when making decisions on important matters, like when one choice or another doesn't really stand out, but can possibly make a big difference, like jobs or medical decisions? No. I try to do what I want to do. That includes what I have to do, because I want to do what I have to do. I want to take care of the people I have to take care of. I want to honor my karmas. But I also, that's all part of it. So for me, the whole spiritual path has been learning to trust myself and to listen to my own heart, to listen to my intuition, to listen to my real, deeper feelings about things. So when I'm not being a total asshole, that's what I do. The rest of this is, please. Maharaji never told us what to do. You're asking, some of us who don't have, we miss having our mentors, teachers, or gurus in the body. I sat right in front of Maharaji. He never told us what to do. In very rare cases. Like he sent Dr. Larry to work for the United Nations Health Organization, and Larry wrote a great book that you should definitely read. It's called Sometimes Brilliant. Fantastic book. Sometimes Brilliant by Larry Brilliant. You say, what can we do with this longing, this gap of missing their guidance? What guidance? I'm telling you, Maharaji never gave us that kind of guidance outside. But you could say he helped empower us to trust our hearts. At least in my case, that's what it came down to. The last thing he told me was, do what you want. When I was leaving India. And then so far, that was the last darshan I've had. And I think it was March 2nd, 1973. I think I flew out of India on the next day, the 3rd. If you don't learn to trust yourself, then what do you have? You're always going to ask other people what's right and wrong. Why would you trust somebody else rather than yourself? Yes, if there's someone you really respect and who seems to have your best interests at heart, you can discuss things. But even if you like their advice, where do you like it? You like it in you, not in them. It makes sense to you. You trust that. So it's all about learning how to trust yourself. And then have the courage to act on that. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage. Same question. When I quiet my mind and listen to my heart, I know I'm guided to become my truest self. How can I tell between thoughts and the whisper of the heart? Well, you haven't become your truest self. The truest self has no thought. The real self is being. Awareness, consciousness, bliss, love, joy, compassion, kindness, sense of oneness with all. There's no thought there. There's feeling, but it's not emotional feeling. It's intuitive. It's deeper than that. So for those of us who are still in this relative level, it ain't easy. We make decisions that turn out not to be what we liked. So that's how we learn. There's no guarantee. You have to get out there and play the game. There's no way around it. You can't sit in your room. You have to get and engage in life and eventually engage fully in life. And finally, and little by little, you become more aware of other people's issues, and your own issues just disappear as time goes on. They become irrelevant. You start to care about people more than you care about yourself. A very unusual situation. I started chanting Hanuman Chalisa 6 months ago. I do see a difference in my mental space. I snap out of darkness faster than before. However, sometimes I do get trapped back in all over again, and it seems like a dark hole with dark thoughts. Does the pain eventually become bearable through chanting? No. You can't avoid pain. And your dark thoughts and your dark hole, this is part of your personality. This is part of your emotional makeup. You're not going to be able to get around that, avoid that. The chanting the Chalisa and spiritual practice will give you an inner strength that and it'll change the perspective you have for your experiences. You could be in pain, but instead of the pain happening to you, you will feel it happening inside of you, so to speak. And that's a shift in where you're, what you're identified with. So, for instance, if you were in a big lake and someone jumped off a diving board and did a cannonball right next to you, the wave will push you over. So that's the sense of being identified with a small ego and the pain happening right there. But once you're identified with the lake, there could be 1 million people doing cannonballs all around the shore, and the lake absorbs it all. It's not the same. So when you say, does the pain become bearable? There's still that essence of trying to get away from pain. And it's not like that. Whatever karmas are going to arise are going to arise. How we meet them, how we meet each moment is what gradually loosens up as time goes on with practice. But it's not a button you push, and those kind of expectations are, once again, the small self, the ego, judging, evaluating. You got to let go of the evaluator. Stop measuring everything. Stop pushing your pain away. It's not easy. It's not easy. Nobody likes to hurt. But our relationship with that pain changes as we get less enamored of our own ups and downs, which happens. Sometimes, eventually how you feel is not the most important thing in the world. Eventually. What do folks do about Maharaj's advice to serve parents when they have severely abusive relationships with them? As in being around each other, they hurt each other, etc., etc., etc. Is there a second highest service we can do? Because you don't want to do the first one. That's funny. Okay, so let's think about parents for a moment. If you're alive right now, it's because of your parents. They got together one night and had a party, and you are the result. If they didn't have a party, you wouldn't be in the body at this time in this way. Because we don't value our lives enough, we also don't value the gift that our parents gave us of life. We focus and get much more involved with possibly the negative stuff. And many of us have tremendous negative stuff with our parents, a lot of pain. But even so, no matter what else our parents have done to us, they fed us, they protected us enough that we're still here. And if we're here, we can find real love. We can find freedom from suffering. We can find out who and what we really are. If we're not here, we can't do that. They say a human body is very precious, human life is very precious and very rare. They say something like, there's a turtle that lives at the bottom of the ocean, the whole ocean, and it comes up to take a breath once every 100 years. And there's a seagull that flies all around the oceans of the world, constantly flying. And in its beak, there's one silk scarf that dangles down as it flies. The chances, this is what they say, that the chances of that turtle coming up for a breath just at the moment that the silk scarf is right there at the edge, the top, at the water's edge, with the seagull flying right there in the middle of the vast oceans, the chances of that turtle's beak touching, the turtle's mouth touching the scarf as it comes up for air, that's the chances of us getting a human body. That's what they say. I don't know, but that's what I've heard many times. Now that's pretty intense, because the idea of a human body, they also say that it's only in a human body that you can become fully enlightened. It's somewhere between the earth and the heavens, so to speak. There's enough gravity, there's enough earthiness, and yet there's also enough space in order to do the work and to do spiritual practice and to learn the Dharma, learn about the Dharma, the spiritual path. But we don't value our lives. We've been shot out of a cannon. We don't know what the fuck is happening. So, and we think, some people think we're here and we'll be gone. Some people think we're here and we'll always be here. It's somewhere in between those two things, depending on how we define ourselves and know ourselves. So, parents, yeah, sometimes that's part of the karmic package. We took a birth in a situation that's very painful, that twists us up and distorts our emotions and our lives. And yeah, we have to work through that. But you can also recognize that someone did that to them too, right? Someone distorted, someone made them suffer. And they're just passing it on because they don't have any vote about it. They're not conscious beings. They're reacting to their own emotional pain, spreading it around despite themselves. Maybe they didn't want to do that, but they have their own problems. And we grew up in that situation and we absorbed that negativity. But how did they get that way? Well, they had parents too. And they had parents too. And they had parents. Where are we going to blame? Where are we going to stop and say, it's your fault I'm like this? No, at some point we have to take responsibility for whatever karmic situation we're in and do the best we can. And we have to find a way to forgive. You could say to forgive our parents for the suffering they've caused us. But when we recognize that they couldn't help themselves and that it came out of their own pain, it kind of takes a little of the sting out of it. At least for me, it did. What did Maharaji mean when he made the gesture of pointing to his head? You mean like this? Well, he was theoretically just scratching his head, but they say that every movement he made was a mudra and was done to remove suffering or take on someone's pain or suffering. There was one picture of him with his hand up like this, and there's another picture of him with his hand like this, and they all mean, they say those positions mean something. So that they're mudras that he did, that happened through him consciously for a certain result. Okay, that's enough. Bhajalo ji Hanuman, Bhajalo ji Hanuman, Bhajalo ji Hanuman, Bhajalo ji Hanuman. Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja, Nijamana Mukuru Sudha, Varunora Bhuvara Gamala Jasu, Chodaya Kupalachar, Uddin Tanu Janike, Smiram Pavan Kuma Siyaram, Pallabudhi Vidya Dev Mohi, Haru Kalesa Bekar, Syavara Ramachandra Padje Sharanam. Jaya Hanuman Gyana Guna Saga, Jaya Kati Sati Loka Ujada, Ramaduta Tulta Baladhana, Anjani Putra Pavana Sutanama, Mahavira Bikram Bajarangi, Matinevara Sumati Kesan, Kanchana Varana Viraj Subesa, Kananu Kundala Panchita Kesa, At Bajudora Tvaja Viraji, Kande Munja Janeru Saji, Shankara Suvan Kesari Nandan, Teja Pratapa Mahajagavan, Vidyavan Guni Ati Chatu, Ramakaja Karibe Koat, Prabhu Charitra Sunibe Korasiya, Rama Lakkhana Sita Nabasiya, Sukshma Rupa Dardasiya Hindekava, Vikata Rupa Dardalanka Charava, Imarupa Darya Sura Sahari, Ramachandra Ke Kaja Savari, Aya Sajivana Lakkhana Jiyaye, Shira Bhuvira Harshira Lai, Upati Kinhi Bhort Barai, Tumamama Priya Bharatai Samabhai, Sasabadan Maro Jasagavan Asakari Shri Pati Kundalagavan Sanakadika Brahmadi Munisa Arada Sharada Sahita Ahisa Yamakubera Digapala Jahante Biko Vidakaya Sake Kahante Upakara Sugriva Inkin Rama Milaya Raja Padadin Maro Mantra Bibishanaman Lankeshwara Vaisava Jagajan Kasahasra Jojan Paraban Ilyotahi Madhura Palajan Prabhu Mudrika Milimkamai Chaladilangi Gayachara Janai Durga Makaja Jagata Kejete Sugamanugra Marete Ramaduare Marakovare Otana Agya Nupezare Sab Sukla Hai Tumhari Sharan Tumhara Chakakaru Kodaran Apana Teja Samaro Ape Inon Loka Hankaten Kampe Utpasashan Kartanahi Ave Mahavira Jabana Masunave Aseroga Hare Sabapira Japata Nirantara Matabira Sankatate Anuman Churave Manakrama Bhachana Dhyana Jolave Sabapararam Tapasvi Raja Inake Kaja Sakala Tumasaja Ormanoratta Joko Elave Sove Amita Jirana Palapave Charon Yuga Paratap Tumara He Parasiddha Jagata Jiyara Sadhu Santake Marakovare Suranikandana Ramadulare Ashta Siddhino Nidike Data Savaradina Janaki Mata Rama Rasayana Tumare Pasa Sadaro Raghupati Kedasa Mare Bhajana Rama Gopave Janama Janama Ked Kadasarave Antakala Raghuvara Pura Jai Jahan Janma Hare Bhakta Kahai Or Devata Chaitanya Dharai Anumata Seyi Saram Sukha Karai Sankata Kate Mite Sabapira Yosumire Hanumata Valavira Jai Jai Hanuman Gosai Pakaro Gurudeva Kinai O Sattavara Parta Karakoi Tahi Banima Sukha Hoi Oya Pare Hanuman Chalisa Oya Siddhi Sakti Garisa Tulasi Das Sada Harichera Ki Jainata Hridaya Mahandir Avanatanaya Sankataharana Mangalamurti Siyaran Ramalakana Sita Sahita Hriday Baso Sudabhu Syavara Ramachandra Padaje Sharanam Mangalamurti Marutananda Sakala Amangalamula Nikanda Mangalamurti Marutananda Sakala Amangalamula Nikanda Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Sita Ram Sita Ram Sita Ram Jai Sita Ram Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram. Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram, Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram. Jai Siya Ram Jai Jai Hanuman Sankatamochan Kripanidhan 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 Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Jai Siya Ram Jai Jai Hanuman Sankatamochan Kripanidhan Jai Siya Ram Jai Jai Hanuman Sankatamochan Kripanidhan Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Jai Bajranga Bali Hanuman Karuna Sagar Kripanidhan Jai Bajranga Bali Hanuman Karuna Sagar Kripanidhan Jai Bajranga Bali Hanuman Lala Langote Lala Nishan Jai Bajranga Bali Hanuman Lala Langote Lala Nishan Sitaram Jai Sitaram Sitaram Jai Sitaram Sitaram Jai Sitaram Shri Ram Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Bajranga Bali Hanuman, Sankata Mochana Kripanidhan, Jai Bajranga Bali Hanuman, Karuna Sagara Kripanidhan, Jai Siya Ram Jai Baba Hanuman, Lala Langote Lala Nishan, Jai Siya Ram Jai Jai Hanuman, Karuna Sagara Kripanidhan. So I had a couple of thoughts more about parents. We don't know our parents as people. We only know them as our parents. We weren't there when they were in high school. We weren't there when they had their hearts broken. We weren't there when their boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with them. We weren't there when their parents were angry at them. We weren't there for their whole lives before we showed up. And a lot happens in a life. An awful lot happens in a life. So it's a good thing to remember that they are human beings who suffer like we do, who had joys like we do, who had pain like we do, who wanted things that they never got like we do, and who got things that they never wanted like we do. So it's a big thing. And Shankaracharya wrote an incredibly beautiful hymn that's called the Devya Aparada Kshamapana Stotram, which means begging the goddess for forgiveness. And the line that's repeated over and over again, Kuputro Jayata Kwachidapi Kumata Nabhavati. A bad son or a bad child may be born, but never a bad mother. And it's not an emotional thing. It's the fact that the mother is the gateway, the door into this world, into a human body for our soul. And even if she was the worst mother that ever lived, if you're still here, if we're still here, somehow we were fed and we were protected enough to survive. And that's a really big thing. It's not everything, and I'm not saying we should forget all the difficulties, but a more mature perspective can be developed as time goes on. Let's include our parents in this prayer, because they are all beings as well. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. 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 Namaste.